The second object of our musical series appears to be so enigmatic for modern mind in its content, so whole, separate, so non-musical, that a preamble is required. A philosophical, literary aesthetic introduction. Without such an introduction, even specialized will have difficulties to understand musically artistic images and details of the delicate world of planet Schumann. We have to take some time living through the thoughts outlined in this intro part, to have the ability to fly in the space of Schumann's music, penetrate easily into his conscious, and understand every curve of this extraordinary world, extraordinary mind. Today we will continue our long conversation about the most important piano compositions. For some reason, they were not revealed in all their beauty as were conceived by authors. Our first series were focused on pictures at an exhibition of Mussorgsky. There were a lot of misunderstanding for pretty clear reasons. Because of it, in 140 years' time period, layers of wrong interpretations overflowed the performances of these wonderful compositions of Mussorgsky. That was due to the fact that both interpretation and performance were going in the wrong direction, as it was named pictures. And these pictures distracted us from Mussorgsky's inner world and were in the way of understanding the real essence of music. Furthermore, Russian history had very tragic moments, such as Russian apocalypse, blast, which in 1917 destroyed all the previous culture, and connection between different points in time was broken. So much so, the modern Russians now have tremendous difficulties to penetrate into the Russian consciousness of the previous era and previous culture. The story is quite different with misinterpretation of Schumann's Symphonic Etudes that we are discussing today. This probably has something to do with the anthropological changes in humans, and also with the quite enigmatic world of Schumann's consciousness. Not the national consciousness, not in the society today, but as far as the mysterious world of Romanticist symbolist is concerned. I want to underline that Schumann, for me, and I think most of you will agree with me, is a creator of symbolism in music. He created in music half a century before symbolism got its embodiment in literature and poetry. It then moved from Western culture into the silver age of Russian symbolism, especially in poetry. It is very interesting that the world of Schumann, which we will observe and through which we will fly with the help of his music, is connected to Russian symbolism, to the poet of Russian symbolism even more than to representatives of the Western European Romanticism. We all know that in America symbolism was represented by Edgar Poe due his famous poem Raven, which is full of dark, fateful symbols. These poetic symbols exist by themselves, regardless of the prototype, in their form as well as their content. This incredible Schumann's achievement in creating these symbolic images in music, later transferred into consciousness of the modern man. Now they live in musical cosmos surrounding us everywhere, in pop music, in rock music, and in other kinds of entertainment. They became part of our lives, and, if you will, part of our modern consciousness. Even without encoding, these musical symbols talk about emotional experience they consist of. This is a new accomplishment for music and poetry, but mostly for music, and the musical symbols begin to act the same way the words do. When we know exactly what the words mean and use language to explain verbal concepts. Same way, due to Schumann, we know what the musical symbols mean, and we can recognize them when come across them in the movies, rock music, or just when they pop up in our minds. Doesn't matter if it's America or Russia, or even Asia in our modern days. Musical thoughts born by Schumann became some kind of human asset in substantial form. We associate them with some particular conditions or emotions, and they now can explain one or another human feeling even better than words. Schumann became the first who created many of such symbols. Symbol of victory, symbol of horse racing, symbol of parade, symbol of cannon firing. We'll see it all and follow it all. How does he reach the level when his music is more expressive than the word? What was behind this idea that brought him, at the height of his talent, by the end of the 30s of the 19th century, to this concept? This musical composition stands by itself. Here Schumann developed his language of symbolism, abstracting himself from public opinion and public success. He even didn't search public understanding. He was talking about it in a letter he wrote to Clara. It's very good that you are not performing this composition, because it's not for public, but for itself. He clearly understood that this music, symphonic etudes, will exist by itself and for itself. But as a genuine artist, he believed that time will come when his music by itself will turn to the people and will become understood and loved because of what it carries inside. I want to draw your attention to this amazing confession of Schumann's, that this music is by itself and for itself, but not for public. Schumann, 190 years ago, obviously already understood that he is creating something very new and different. It was not a new genre, as genre was actually not new at all. But shape and content appeared to be revolutionary new. Today, 2 centuries later, it is still incomprehensible. What is the reason for this? I'm connecting with an idea of our estrangement from the world of Romanticism. First of all, if in a verbal language we are reading symbols with the help of linguists, history, and aesthetics, using pictures, so we can recreate somehow information for verbal language. But it doesn't work so easily for music, even with the help of interpreters, because of its unique phenomenon. In literature, we have many more patterns and comparisons than in music. Besides, there are many more great writers than great composers, and only one, Schumann, with his romantic world of symbolism. Later, some other joined him, like, for example, Russian decadent and symbolist Alexander Scriabin, whose personality is still quite mystical. But they cannot be correlated at all, as Scriabin is just a local Russian poet and mystic. whereas Schumann is a creator of absolutely new world, a new musical universe, new sonic world of universal musical symbolism, musical romanticism. He is very distinguished from his wonderful friends and colleagues, Chopin and Liszt. Out of three of them, Liszt is most understood. Probably because he was a promoter of his own music. He played his full of decorations and effects compositions by himself, traveling the world and seducing wide range of public by his perfect and bright technique. But he was not able, he could not create the new and unique world to get into which is as desirable as its heart. Despite all his enigma and refinement, Chopin had tremendously difficult character, quite difficult, inconsistent, and broken. This weird combination of Polish, French, West Slavic, Polish, Slavic, and Gallic created highly explosive mix, a very controversial mix. When we work on the creation of musical series on Chopin's compositions, we'll take a closer look into his character, but still, he is much closer and more comprehensible, despite his fragile appearance and combination of masculinity and capriciousness. Anyway, up until now, it's still in our modern culture, and it's quite easy to understand. Not easy to realize, but quite easy to understand for us modern people. But world of romantic symbolism is different. It is so distant from us. It is so sublime, full of sentimentalism, where images make us cry in admiration. Such conditions are gone from our world, as humanity doesn't need them anymore, because of non-function. Those incredible fragility and those state of spirit are simply non-functionality in our modern life. They're not required. This Schumann spirit has no place in modern world. Because of it, modern man cannot penetrate into Schumann's character and his mind, into times of knights and lovely ladies, to be a lady's servant, to be ready to die for the beauty. All these knightly ideas, the beautiful dame and knight, it's all in his music. This is idealistic service to the beauty, complete disillusion and complete distancing from reality, despite his desire for freedom and democracy. For example, we can hear shells explode in Vienna Carnival, we can hear Marseillaise, so we can say he is responding to some events from the outside world, such as the French Revolution, but only as much as it was affecting his free spirit, which all his life was striving for freedom and fought against Philistinism. What is the meaning of Philistinism, especially in Schumann's vocabulary? It is a bourgeois. He was fighting in his music, in art, in his journalistic work, all his life, screaming against bourgeois, against of the ordinary, ordinarity and being ordinary, It was a war, a declared war, mortal war, where the spirit has to obtain victory over the hateful materialism, which was so hard on Schumann. In this world, his spirit was imprisoned. So it's so hard to understand all subtlety of his soul. Infinite flights, all these airbags between the tones, like pilots say when we fall down in the air pockets, when we're flying in the plane. So he's all in such a free fall between his notes and sounds. He's flying, he's falling, he's out of gravity. His coquetry is so fine for our understanding, as well as his humor. It's not a frontal lobe humor, it is very fine and delicate and everything. He is doing whatever he does or saying is so romantic, poetic, beautiful, and elegant, so not from this world. So it is beyond our imagination. For us, people of today, to get into his consciousness, to get into his will, to get into it, we have to transform ourselves into unworldly poet, but full of life, humor, love, and happiness, and unbelievably positive. No matter the drama and tragedy in his life, his character is incredibly positive. If Chopin's is all about drama, he tends to minor key and tragedy. Liszt is down to earth. He is busy with philosophy between good and bad, good and evil, and his strong connections with earthly life that occupied him his whole life. But Schumann, he was born a poet, out of touch with reality. Meanwhile, he's not like other symbolist romanticists, who are usually very gloomy. As it is quite easy to be a romantic like Byron, Byronic way, to talk to the abyss, to fall down from the cliffs, as most romantics love it. He is nothing like it. No Werther syndrome. Nothing. He is some kind of rose heaven. Rose not because of color, but because of rose flowers. It's such an incredible character and spirit. Besides, he is German, from northeast of Germany, from Leipzig. So such personality is very uncommon. It's definitely an anomaly for the humans, and an anomaly for the German nation. Such humor, elegance, nobility cannot be associated easily with Germans. It does not bring any associations with the German nation, which we associate mostly with a certain pedantry and straightforwardness. Such a surprising combination. But let's get back to Earth for a moment to touch on some technical questions. When Schumann was thinking about this composition, he said, "I want to show the transformation of the theme, the dramatic transformation." This theme was sent to him by one music enthusiast. It was a theme without harmonization, monophonic, like a song. Schumann perceived the theme as a funeral one, in his own words. "For me, it sounds like an ordinary European ballad, in minor key, some sort of song from the era of European knights. But obviously, Schumann's consciousness is more tremulous than mine, and because of some minor key cues, we will follow them later. He assumed it as a funeral motive. He shared his plans about developing this funeral theme and to transform it using more colors and traits and give it a life asserting ending. And he did it. He did it in a brilliant way, remarkably original. So I am expecting our voyage will be very exciting at that point. Now, as for the name Etudes, here we have same problems with the interpretations that we had with pictures of Mussorgsky. Pictures, 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 pictures. And everyone looked at them, illustrated them, but totally forgot that Mussorgsky's pictures, of which we made 6-hour-long series, were just a trigger that created a storm of personal emotions for Modest Petrovich. Whoever follows the series of our musical shows can precisely trace all the description of Modest Mussorgsky consciousness. Same applies here. Etudes. Teachers in schools, conservatories, universities, and high schools had pursued just utilitarian ideas in developing performance technique when they taught us that Chopin's and Liszt's compositions are romantic etudes. Only the bass. They were transcendent etudes. They were, and they are called like that, not just because of difficulties in playing technique, but mostly because these techniques were supposed to create completely new artistic images, a new world, the richest, the newest, the phenomenal. This only became possible thanks to the new technique Chopin and Liszt introduced to create images they wanted to convey. Where all this etudiant technique is just a tool to deliver new images. It was not possible before, and there was no such technique. But Liszt made it possible to see all his sunset harmonies, wandering fires, and surrealistic images through his unique technique. Chopin's is showing us unlimited different images, revolutionary images, war images, the hurricanes based on his new innovative techniques, the waterfalls. So only such an approach can be called etudes. This incredibly complicated technique serves as a base for new world, for new era, new structures of Liszt and Chopin. But, as I already said, Liszt and Chopin are quite easy and clear to understand, especially through etudes. Especially Liszt, with so much taking from outside in his easy-to-understand technique. He is very ornamental in his music mostly, when he is touching technical matters. He is more of a philosopher, publisher, and educator, even more than he is a composer. All is obvious with him, even though it's not so easy to create true artistic images. We know many performers of Liszt etudes, but not many true finds and discoveries from the interpreters, because even Liszt has big artistic objectives. It's even worse with Chopin. In his 24 etudes we can see 24 absolutely different, quite fantastic images, where Chopin is represented in full. He's not so monumental, but richer in images. It's more compressed. His images are much more compressed than Liszt's. Full Chopin is displayed in his 24 different faces, different images. It's very easy for him to express himself in a miniature. By nature, he was naturally born a miniaturist. He loved miniatures and was most comfortable expressing himself through clear images in his etudes, which at the very least can make sense. So we still can get in the consciousness of Liszt and Chopin, in spite of all his new images and completely new ideas. As far as Schumann etudes are concerned, it is very interesting to see what Schumann did here in terms of techniques. If Liszt and Chopin's etudes were exercise the weak fingers, fifth and fourth fingers, developing all physiologically possible fluent and colorful techniques, then Schumann created something quite mysterious, because his perception of technique and creative images was in a different dimension, if I may say, a little superhuman. Being apparently a wonderful pianist, he challenged himself as physiologically extraordinary tasks because of his new ideas, completely different dimensional ideas. And in the end, he ruined his hand and became an invalid and was not able to continue his performance. But to our selfish joy, he became a great composer, great innovator, creator of a new world. He was always dreaming about a career of a performer, but by chance was forced to turn to composition instead. So what did he do? First, he completely violated our musical vestibular system. We are normally operating with two hands. We have soprano and we have the bass. And we rely on two hands and body in the middle. Schumann changed it and distributed his musical narrative through three levels, as if we had three hands. Now we have soprano, middle range, and basses. Nobody has ever done such a thing. Liszt didn't it. Neither did Chopin, because it's so inconvenient and against human nature, against human physiology. It's already not developing but ruining human physiology. It is inconvenient for vestibular apparatus too, and for the body support, and for the brain coordination and motor function. We have no skills to operate on three levels, only on two, as we have only two hands. It would be much easier if we had three hands. And what's Schumann doing? Throughout his symphonic etudes, for some exception of only specific chord-based variations, all action takes place on three different levels. And as a composer, especially being a German composer, he is following it very precisely, very pedantically. He keeps this technique and never abandons any of these three levels. This is tremendously hard to do. Since he is completely obsessed with his weak fingers, fifths and fourths, he is moving body support into middle voices and facilitating basses and sopranos. Nobody does it. But we mostly rely on sopranos and basses, and the middle range is always supportive. With Schumann, it's all different. In all variations, main action takes place in the middle range, and basses and sopranos are supportive. This confuses all performers, because they don't teach you this in schools, and no Czerny etudes can prepare you for that. This is completely new, and it sidetracks most of the musicians. They get so much involved into the solving of technical tasks that they have no chance to pay attention to Schumann's symbolically poetic delirium, which was his world, which he delivered using this weird technique. This world is full of elegance, life, excitement, and grace. Can you just imagine that we have three levels instead of two where we're operating? So here we got a musculoskeletal system all messed up. Our brain is confused. And we have to get out from this labyrinth of physiological and vestibulo-technical challenges to make the texture transparent and light, as an air, and to create his paradise, so audience could hear only a song. So it's just like we're singing la la la. This is what Schumann is. He is a true songwriter. He wants us to hear. He is singing romantic symbolic song. And all texture is in 3 levels, incredibly rich, full of chords. He also was obsessed with the idea to involve all 10 fingers at the same time as much as possible. Neither Liszt nor Chopin have done this. They always alternate chords. He, on the other hand, wants all 10 fingers be involved in making the sounds. And all 10 should sound and intone in a different way, like an orchestra. This is a clearly physiologically technical challenge that's completely utopian, that nobody wants to deal with. They simply try to play all notes, but not in tone, and to make it light in order to show Schumann's main metaphysical idea: to turn the clock back from death to life through this series of romantic songs. Such a gigantic super challenge, not solved up until today by one reason or another. On one hand, I suppose it has to do with the great technical difficulties which make the musicians for more than 180 years now to concentrate on them, thus distracting them. On the other hand, as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, there is a phenomenal spirit, remarkable consciousness of symbolic romantic sentimentalist who is so distant from us. He was distant even from them in his own time, too understood neither by Liszt, maybe Liszt did a bit better, as he was more tolerant, nor by Chopin, who didn't understand him at all. Chopin thought that Schumann was writing educational music. Whatever let him write his pedagogic music, he said once. Apparently, Chopin couldn't see more than just an incredibly difficult technique for a human body, a new musical technique for piano. That was created by Schumann. It looks like even Chopin was not able to see all these cloud castles built by Schumann, by his unique technique, never repeated by anyone else in history. Now I'd like to say a few words about the name, which is also a very interesting story. Initially he wanted to name this piece Variations Pathétiques. Variation Pathétique. It is because there is a lot of pathos here, and many overlaps with Beethoven, who was idolized by Liszt, Chopin, and Schumann. He was an idol, superstar of the time. For them he was an ocean where they came from. But then Schumann decided to emphasize the symphonic qualities, symphonic essence of this composition. Like I said, when all 10 fingers are involved, and each one intones in a different way, representing different instruments, and bringing different ideas, 10 different ideas at once. He changed the title to Symphonic Variations, and after the 2 etudes, and there were big technical challenges, so then he switched to etudes. So we can see from it how his mind was skipping from content to form, how it was jumping from one name to another. He was going back and forth from technical complications. From etudes he posed to simple ideas, which were supposed to be layering on top of these etudes. Pathetic variations, variations pathétique. That is, he wanted pathetic poetry. He strived then to distract our attention, then to concentrate it on etudes, and then his consciousness was kind of confused. Let it simply be pathetic variations, not etudes. All of this in a short story, in historical document that we have concerning the compositions of this unique creation, were the documents where we can follow the composer's minds and see where he's going. He wants a new technique, new world, new poetic world, new symbolic world, new language. As for the title, how can you name it? You can just describe it. In this case, he would need to write the whole introduction to it, like Mussorgsky did for his Promenade, when he writes almost half a page of literary instruction how to play it. If Schumann had his will, he would have written the whole volume of how to play it. But Schumann was apparently a very humble man, an introvert with a character of an extrovert. It was a contradiction, which was ripping him apart from inside out. Anyway, we have no written description for this composition, so we'll figure out it during the trip into consciousness, traveling in time, in culture, speaking in the language of music. What did the author want to tell us? Did he achieve it? Oh, he did. He did. He did it beautifully, brilliantly, unique. So how come we haven't accomplished it until this day? As always, let's go step by step through the music, and it will help us to penetrate the consciousness and the unique beauty of this poetic spirit. And so, let us get started.